For 30 years, your voice, your morning. John Mackenzie's Morning, only on 4CA 846.
Now, I mentioned earlier on I'd heard a Navy spokesman talking about the need for consideration of the long-term aspects of the Navy's needs here in the Port of Cairns. I do remember the spokesman specifically talking about the need to consider the maintenance or even expansion of that swing basin to give specifically, I think it was the helicopter platform ships access to our port. And associated in the story was also Senator Ian McDonald, our North Queensland Senator, who's on the line from the national capital now. Ian, good morning.
Good morning, John.
A little bit of the background to what this naval spokesman had to say. Do you know what it was all about and how the question came up?
Well, John, we're having estimates committee hearings in the Senate this week in Canberra, and I was involved in the defence estimates yesterday. I raised with the Admiral about the issue of the Cairns Naval Base. I'm always very keen to point out, as I did several times to him, that Cairns is Australia's second largest East Coast naval base, and it should be able to accept Australia's capital ships into that base. Now, he indicated that he understood there was a problem with the swing basin in the at HMAS Cairns in the Trinity Inlet just there, and I was asking him whether there was any work being done between the Navy and the Queensland government about that. Now, I don't want to verbal him and don't want to attribute to him things that he didn't say, but he clearly indicated there was an issue there and that it was something that they needed to look into further.
With any particular type of ship in mind?
Well, I was particularly referring to the HMAS Canberra, which is one of the two new landing helicopter docks, biggest ships the Australian Navy has ever had. It seems ridiculous to me that this ship, which will be used always in the north, either for humanitarian or hopefully not, but for defence or military purposes, and it seems incredible to me that it will not be able to dock in the second largest East Coast naval base on the Australian mainland. Now, John, it's as he pointed out yesterday, in fairness to him, they've contributed to Wharf 10 in Townsville, and when the ship is in the north, they'll be calling into Townsville to get troops from Laverack Barracks, the maritime element of the Army that will work from the LHDs. But it again seems incredible to me that ship and some other big ships can't get in there. Now, John, I know your view, which is the same as mine and Warren Inch's for a long time. Cairns needs to be able to increase that naval base because it's such an important element to the local Cairns economy, such an important element to jobs, and of course employment's a huge issue in Cairns at the moment. So we've got to look at ways of increasing the importance of HMAS Cairns, but how can we ever do that if some of the big ships of the Navy can't even get into the port? So it really needs a sensible look at these issues. And of course, John, as I've heard you say many times, it's not just the Navy ships, it's the cruise ships that are avoiding Cairns, the big cruise ships, because they can't come in and they've got to tender people in from the open sea. And so the Queensland government really has to ignore the minority Greens groups who will make up any story to stop any sort of development in Cairns or anywhere else, and get some sensible advice about a swing basin that will allow Australia's Navy capital ships into, as I keep repeating, Australia's second largest East Coast naval base.
Now, you talk about these biggest naval ships ever. I didn't realise they're of those dimensions. Now, they won't be able to access here, or potentially won't be able to access here, but will they? What sort of access will they have to the Port of Townsville?
Well, John, some years ago, the government of the day built a new, what's called Wharf 10, specifically for these big ships coming in, on the basis that Laverack at Townsville is Australia's biggest army base, and the maritime element of the army is based at Laverack in Townsville. So the ships call in there, pick them up, and go off to wherever they're going. But again, and can I say, in fairness to the Admiral yesterday, he indicated that they had a good facility in Townsville, and I accept that. And I accept that that's where the troops get on. But this is a naval base in Cairns. It is incredible to me that Australia's big capital ships, not just the LHDs, but other big ships, find difficulty in getting in to HMAS Cairns. That has to be addressed. Yeah. There may be times, cyclones, other elements, when Wharf 10 in Townsville is not available. And, that ship needs to be providored, it needs to be maintained and sustained in the north, I think, where it should operate.
You talk about the Greens basically making up any story they can latch on to stop work going ahead, to stop progress in the Port of Cairns. When you talk about those who are supportive of this project getting underway, what's your picture of that? What are you picking up as to the feeling throughout the community here, throughout the city of Cairns and the far northern region generally?
John, in the northern Queensland region generally, the only people that oppose a realistic expansion of the Cairns Harbour are the Greens political party and a couple on the left of the Labor Party, a couple of crazies in the Labor Party, who owe their existence, I might say, to Greens preferences. So I can understand why they go along with the Greens, because they wouldn't be there if the Greens didn't send them a lot of preferences and help them get into Parliament. But everybody else, John, all the community leaders in Cairns, and in fact in far north Queensland generally, understand the importance of HMAS Cairns, the importance of that base to the far north Queensland economy, and the importance, I might say, of cruise ships to the economy. And John, if I can just digress a fraction, I also asked yesterday about the bid by the Cairns Consortium for the Pacific Patrol Boat Replacement Program. Now, whilst it's a different issue, it's important that every focus is made on that bid, which would see those boats being built in Cairns as the last lot were and as the current maintenance is. And that's all part of the naval establishment, the naval shipbuilding, the naval maintenance, the naval training of crews. So it's all part of the one thing that would be a huge boost to Cairns. So if we got the shipbuilding, if we could get the big ships in, if we could expand, and there are a lot of plans around for the expansion of HMAS Cairns, that would be great for Australia's defence needs, be great for the Navy, and of course it would be fabulous for the far north Queensland economy. Now, those are the things that I keep trying to impress upon the Admirals, and not only the Admirals, I might say, but the Minister for Defence and the Prime Minister, because this is a very important issue for Northern Australia, particularly important for the Cairns region. I'll
just mention this one to you. The former Queensland Premier Campbell Newman was in studio a week or so ago, and he made this observation. He said, with this almost exploding influence in politics in Australia of the Green movement, if we don't get this dredging project completed within 10 years, it will never happen. It will never happen if we don't get it. Now, simply because he believes that they're going to continue expanding this influence and this power they have at top government levels. So, and particularly, I don't know why, but Cairns seems to be the number one target of the Green movement in this country. They seem to be prepared to use us as a bargaining chip, particularly with UNESCO, whereas those other ports along the Queensland coast seem to be getting off scot-free. But once again, the urgency of this project, and what's your feeling about it?
Well, it is very urgent, John, and it is a ridiculous argument. I mean, the only environmental impact that I've learnt of in the Trinity Inlet in the last decade or so is when a Greenpeace ship came into there and dumped oil into Trinity Harbour. Now, did the Greens make any issue of that at all? Of course they didn't. Did those few Labor people who seem to think that Green support is important, did they make an issue of this? No, they didn't. And so it's a very selective campaign they're running, and that's why I always say it's a fraud. It's a political campaign. It's very little to do with the environment. And John, we are clever enough these days to be able to dredge and to monitor the impacts of dredging and to curtail what little impacts there may be. And we just have to do that and do it sensibly, but it can be done. And that's why I get very, very annoyed when the Greens have an influence that is far beyond their voter support and far beyond any realistic view on the environment or the barrier reef.
Very interesting, Ian. I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
That's my pleasure, John.
He's the Senator for Queensland, Senator Ian McDonald, with the time coming up to 10:27.
I've waited so long for this, and it's almost